जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनन्दन व्रज जन रंजन। यमुनतीरावनचारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनन्दन व्रज जन रंजन। यमुनतीरावनचारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद। श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद। श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद। श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Nitai Sachinandana, Nitai Sachinandana, Nitai Sachinandana, Gaurari. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Jai Muralidhar Prabhu Paramahansa Chacha Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anita Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. All glories assembled devotees, all glories assembled devotees, all glories assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Today we are going to repeat the same verses which we did the last time. That was about 8 to 10 weeks ago, I think. Verses 15 to 17 from chapter 2. It's an important section. This is a very important section. And I think many of you would have forgotten what we discussed in the last class. So I'll make a quick summary because we did not complete the discussion last time. So I've been requested to complete it this time. I'll try to complete it this time. But I'll quickly go through what we discussed last time. Basically, what we're trying to understand in this section is, who am I? This is what we're trying to understand, because this is the most important knowledge given in this section, based on which the entire Bhagavad Gita is. And this information you don't get in any universities, any department of science, you don't get this knowledge. So this knowledge is given only in the scriptures, and especially in the Bhagavad Gita. So what is it saying? It says that we humans are spiritual beings having a human experience. Just like rats are also spiritual beings. I'm just taking rats, I have no special favor for them, but I just as an example. Similarly, rats are spiritual beings having a rat experience. So you see, there are two parts to that sentence. We are spiritual beings, that means we are not this body, we are spiritual beings. That means we are pure consciousness which comes from the soul. We are spiritual in that sense. But having a human experience, that human experience happens because of conditioned consciousness. In the last class, I think I was able to talk only about pure consciousness, but today we'll try to talk about conditioned consciousness. So there are two kinds of consciousness, and that is what we'll try to cover today. But before that, let's look at what the verses 15 to 17 talks about, the context, and then we'll talk about this pure consciousness and conditioned consciousness, and how to a simple method by which we can realize that we are pure consciousness. So that's what we're going to do today. So the verses which are supposed to be discussed today is verses 15 to 17. I'm skipping the Sanskrit portion of it. We'll just look at the English translation. This is before this, in verses 13 and 14, Krishna says, those who are sober people will not get bewildered by death. because death is nothing but a transfer from one body. The soul gets transferred from one body to another, just like during our own experience from boyhood to youth to old age. The soul is also transmigrating from the same body. It is moving from one body to another. So he is introducing the concept of saying that you are not the body, but you are something more than that. You are a spiritual being. That is being introduced in verse 13. And then from there, suddenly, Krishna talks about saying that you must learn to tolerate. If you want to realize this knowledge, the fact that you are a spiritual being and not your body, the one quality which you should cultivate is tolerance. Learn to tolerate, because whatever is happening, the heat and cold, happiness and distress, are not pertaining to you, and hence you should learn to tolerate. It has nothing to do with you. Now, how can that be? Because this sounds very, we are not able to relate to that. So we'll look at how to understand that. That's what this class is going to be. But basically, Krishna is saying, learn to tolerate. And then he says the next verse, which is, we'll read the verses. O best among men, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. He says, if you learn to tolerate, then that becomes the passport for liberation. Liberation here meaning that the soul goes back to the spiritual world. So if you look at that verse 15, very interestingly, it talks about learn to tolerate also happiness. We have normally, when we talk about learning to tolerate, we tolerate of distress. But here Krishna is saying, learn to tolerate even happiness. Isn't that a little strange? Isn't it? But there is a meaning to that. That's the purpose of this class today, is understand what is Krishna saying there. He's saying to not get disturbed by happiness and distress, both happiness and distress. And a person who's steady in that is eligible for liberation. And then in verse 16, Krishna goes on to say, those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existence there is no endurance, and of the eternal there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Having said that in the earlier verses that you are not the body, Krishna is now trying to say that that which keeps changing is not eternal. The characteristic of eternal is it doesn't change. Anything which changes, whether it changes in 1 second or 1 million of years, it is still a change. So anything which changes is not eternal, it is temporary. In the definition of the scriptures, temporary means that which doesn't change. And then Krishna is implying there, this material body keeps on changing, because we from boyhood to youth to old age, we keep changing, and hence that is not eternal. But the soul within doesn't change. It is constant, doesn't change. So that is eternal. That is the characteristic of the two natures, the spiritual nature and the material nature. The characteristic is one changes, one doesn't change. And then he goes on to say, that which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. Having said that the soul is unchanging, is eternal, it goes on to explain that it cannot be destroyed. The body can be destroyed because Arjuna is on the war front, and the bodies there will get destroyed, but the soul within doesn't get destroyed. And that is what the verse 17 talks. And what it means is talking about that which pervades. What is pervading the entire body? If you look at Prabhupada's purport, he talks about what pervades the entire body is consciousness. I will just read some sentences from the Prabhupada's purport here. This verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. And what is the nature? What is the attribute of the soul? Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body in part or as a whole. This spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pain and pleasures of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, so you see, Prabhupada is making a very important conclusion. Because we can know only the pain and pleasure of our body and not of another person's body, Prabhupada is saying that each person hence has a soul. Every individual has a soul. This is in contrast to the impersonalist understanding, which is different, which I'm not going to get into. From a personalist point of view, every individual has a soul. Therefore, the Prabhupada is saying from that, when he says therefore, he is coming to a conclusion. Each and every body is the embodiment of an individual soul and the symptoms of the soul's presence. So how do we know whether there's a soul or not? Because of the presence of consciousness. And the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. I'll stop here there and we'll proceed with what we wanted to discuss today. So we are trying to understand, how do we understand, Krishna is saying that you are not this body, but you are a pure consciousness. How to understand this? So we'll take I've gone through this in the previous class, so I'm going to go through it very quickly, because my emphasis is going to be in talking in terms of not the pure consciousness we are, which we'll discuss now, but about the conditioned consciousness. What is this meaning of conditioned consciousness? So I'm going to use the process of subject-object to understand that we are pure consciousness. In the first step, let's take the first step. The eyes, my eyes and the mic. My eyes is different from the mic. That means the subject is different from the object. Correct? The experiencer, that is the eyes, and the experience, that is the mic, are different. The subject and the object are different. That is clear, isn't it? I see the mic here. My eye is a subject and the mic is the object. So now let's go to the next. So this is the first step. We are trying to understand that we are pure consciousness. And I'm going through an example to illustrate that. Elaborating further on that, the scene, the eye is the one, but it can see many objects. Not only the eyes, not only the mic, I can see many objects. But the seer is one, the seen are many. We see many things, but the seer is one, the same pair of eyes. Whatever you see keeps changing, but the seer is not changing. The objects keep changing, the experiencing instrument, the eyes, is more or less the same. The only limitation is the eyes can see the object, the subject can see the object, but the subject cannot see themselves. The eyes cannot see itself. Is that okay so far? The limitation is that the eyes cannot see themselves. This is the first step. Next step. But the eyes themselves can also be seen. How? The mind can see the eyes, that I'm wearing a specs, that I'm able to see. The mind is able to see the eyes. In the sense that I am aware that my eyes are open. I need glasses. So the mind is aware of the eyes. And hence the eyes becomes the object and the mind becomes the subject. The mind is the seer and the eyes are the see. Not only the eyes, the ears, the nose, etc. The whole body is an object of experience for the mind. And clearly, the mind is different from the gross body. Again, the same principle, the subject and the object. Is that okay so far? Is that okay? Any questions so far? Is it okay?
Yeah. It's not clear from this analogy to me how is mind not part of the body.
No, the subtle body and the gross body. So the body here means the gross body. Okay, the eyes is the gross body. So I'm going stage by stage. I am not the gross body. Then I'm subtle body. Then we're going to come to say I'm not the subtle body. I'm something else. So we're going stage by stage. Okay, so the mind is different from the gross body. Gross body meaning the eyes, the ears, nose. Third stage. The mind itself is experience. The modification of the mind itself are experience. And you are the experience. I can know that I am happy. I feel it because happiness is happening in the mind. I know I am happy. When I feel pain, I feel miserable. And I know that I am miserable. So our mind is also experienced. If the mind is experienced, it cannot be the subject. It has to be an object. There must be an experiencer of the mind. Something must be experiencing the mind, and the experience of the mind must be different from the mind. Because the principle is the seer and the seen are different. So the mind becomes an object, and the subject in this case is pure consciousness. So the pure consciousness is the subject, and the mind is also an object. So the mind, the subtle body and the gross body are objects as far as the subject, which is pure consciousness, is concerned. So using this example, we can reasonably come to the conclusion that there is something called pure consciousness, and the Bhagavad Gita says, you are that pure consciousness. And that pure consciousness is indestructible. That cannot be destroyed. And the source of that pure consciousness comes from the soul. So it is establishing that you are the soul, you are not the body, gross or subtle, you are not the mind, you are not the thoughts, you are not the emotions, you are different from that. Now, as I said, I'm going to discuss today mainly about conditioned consciousness, which we will be able to then clearly understand how this can be understood in the totality. So, the fact that we are pure consciousness, today we cannot feel that, we cannot realize that, because we can say, no, how would you say that I'm a pure consciousness? I'm experiencing pain, I'm experiencing pleasure. So, how that is happening, we are going to discuss now. So, pure consciousness, the word for that is Chit or Chaitanya, is the Sanskrit word for consciousness. Everything is matter, and that which experiences this matter, the external world and the internal world, that is the mind and the external world, is consciousness. It is consciousness which is experiencing the internal world and the external world. So what exactly is consciousness? Consciousness is the capacity to desire and the capacity to experience. So the attribute of consciousness is its capacity to desire and capacity to experience. If consciousness is not there, then that entity cannot experience nor can it desire. So life is nothing but a series of conscious experiences. Life is not, okay, consciousness plus the object of consciousness is experience. We have gone through this in the last section, so I'm going to hurriedly go through it. So the fact that we are pure consciousness is fairly clear. As we said, the eyes cannot see themselves. Similarly, the pure consciousness cannot see itself, because it is the instrument through which you see everything else. Consciousness can never be objectified. The possibility of seeing, hearing, tasting, understanding, etc., all these first-person experiences are possible because of consciousness. It is because of consciousness we are able to experience. That is, in summary, the whole thing. Consciousness gives us the capacity to experience. And the soul is the source of that pure, or what we call as witness consciousness. I'm going to go into the conditioned consciousness. So, before I go there, I'll share some analogies to understand how to understand this pure consciousness. Some analogies. The screen and the movie analogy. Just as every scene in a movie, no matter how dramatic or colorful, is projected onto a screen that remains unchanged and unnoticed, all experience arise within consciousness which silently holds them without being affected. What we're trying to say here is consciousness is not getting affected. The pure consciousness is not getting affected by whatever is happening. Whatever is happening in terms of pain, pleasure is all happening in the subtle body and the gross body. The pure consciousness is not getting affected by pain and pleasure. Just like in a movie, on the screen, you will see so many things happening, but the screen itself is very neutral. Nothing is happening to that. You don't see the screen, but everything is happening on the screen. These are some of the analogies for us to understand that consciousness is, the pure consciousness is different from my subtle body and gross body. We focus on the movie of life, but rarely recognize the ever-present screen or awareness in which it plays. This pure consciousness is something which we are not aware of. What we are aware of, I'm going to talk about in terms of conditioned consciousness. Just as the movie cannot exist without the screen, experience cannot exist without consciousness. The movie represents the changing phenomena of life. Our thoughts, our emotions, our sensations, everything represents the movie. The screen represents consciousness, unchanging, ever present, and unaffected by the content projected upon it. We rarely notice this. When I'm using the word consciousness, I'm talking about pure consciousness. We are going to discuss about conditioned consciousness later on, after about a few slides. We rarely notice consciousness because it is not an object we can observe. It is a subject, the very faculty of knowing through which all things are experienced. Like the screen, it is silent and constant, yet absolutely essential. I am not the movie of life. I am the screen on which it plays. I am not the scene. I am the seer. All this is to establish the fact that we are pure consciousness. I'm going to skip certain things. Some more analogies. The mirror and reflection analogy. These are all analogies just for us to understand pure consciousness. Okay. A mirror reflects all images placed before it, but it remains untouched by them. No matter how many things pass in front of it, the mirror itself stays unchanged. Consciousness reflects the entire play of life without ever being tainted or altered by it. I'm talking about pure consciousness. Nothing is happening to the pure consciousness. There is a verse in the Bhagavad Gita in 1334. It says, Yata prakashayati eka krishnam lokam imam ravi kshetram kshetri tata krishnam prakashayati bharata. Krishna says here, O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, the soul, within the body, illuminates the entire body by pure consciousness. The analogy is clear, isn't it? Just like the sun illuminates the entire universe, the soul illuminates the entire body through consciousness. And then Krishna goes on to say, one who can see that all activities are performed by the gross and subtle body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the pure consciousness, the self, the soul, does nothing, actually sees. The soul, the pure consciousness does nothing. So who's doing? All that we'll see later on now. But Krishna says that the pure consciousness does nothing. It is just an observer. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body, O Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. So this is about the pure consciousness. The pure consciousness has nothing to do with what is happening in our life, our pain and pleasures. And that is why Krishna talks about saying, tolerate happiness and distress. Not only distress, even happiness tolerated, because all that has nothing to do with you. This is again we are talking about pure consciousness. I'll stop here before I go into conditioned consciousness. Any questions so far? But I think if I finish off the conditioned consciousness, then you'll have questions, then we can discuss. I'll finish that and then we'll come to. So what is, as I said, I started off by saying there are two kinds of consciousness. There is a pure consciousness which is coming from the soul, and then there is the reflected consciousness or conditioned consciousness or material consciousness. What is that? That is what we're going to see now. This pure consciousness which is coming from the soul is reflected in the subtle body. And the subtle body becomes a conscious entity. The subtle body is matter. Matter cannot experience, but in the presence of the pure consciousness, the subtle body gets spiritualized, and hence it is able to experience and do so many things. Our subtle body has the capacity to reflect this witness consciousness. It is called reflected consciousness or material consciousness. The subtle body borrows consciousness from this pure consciousness. The example given is of the sun and the moon. In 1334 we saw, Krishna says, just like the sun pervades the sun rays pervades the entire universe and illuminates the universe, pure consciousness pervades the entire body. If you look at the sun and the moon by itself does not have any light. But it is borrowing the light from the sun and reflecting it. Similarly, the subtle body borrows the consciousness from the pure consciousness, from the soul, and becomes animated. Matter gets animated because of borrowing the consciousness from the soul. The pure consciousness is reflected in the subtle body. Okay. And everything which we are talking about in terms of our experience of pain, pleasure, happiness, distress, thoughts, emotions, everything is coming from the subtle body. And then how does that when we say I am feeling happy or I am feeling sad, what is that I which comes with that? What I is that? The I which comes from that is here. The subtle body has 4 parts: mind, intelligence, ego, and memory. Ego is the sense of I. This ego is what catches this reflected consciousness and transmits it to the other elements of the subtle body, and the subtle body transmits it to the sensory system. The sense of I gets attached to whatever happens in the subtle body. So when I feel happy, the I gets attached to the happiness. I feel happy. When I feel sad, the ego, the sense of ego gets attached to that misery or unhappiness. And we say, I am unhappy. So the word I, when we use in our normal situation, is the I which is coming from the ego, not the I which is coming from the soul. The real I is that. I means the sense of identification. At this stage, in our conditioned consciousness, in the conditioned consciousness, the I is the I coming from the ego. So, because the ego and the body are very closely connected, when whatever is happening in the subtle body, in terms of our thoughts, emotions, whatever is happening, we identify that I gets attached to it. And when we say, I am feeling happy or I am feeling sad, that is coming from the ego. And we call it the false ego because it is a false identification. The real identification is your real identity is you're a spiritual being. When the ego gets purified, then the purified ego identifies with the soul instead of the body. In our conditioned consciousness, the ego identifies with the body. The ego gets attached to the body. And when the ego is purified, then it gets identified with the Atman. That is, I am a spiritual being. That the real I is, I am a spiritual pure consciousness with a human experience. My real identity is I am a spiritual being, a pure consciousness, but I am playing the role of a human being because I have the subtle body of a human being. If it is a rat, it is a pure spiritual, pure consciousness, but playing the role of a rat because it is having a subtle body of a rat. And once this purification of the ego happens, then we realize the pure consciousness, the soul realizes that I am a part of the Supreme Lord, that my role is I am a servant of the Lord. That happens when that is called self-realization. I think I'll invite questions after I finish off this because I think it's a little technical. Is it? Is it little deep? Is it difficult to understand? It must be, no? Okay. Okay, I just want to share one important verse from Bhagavatam because this verse is a very, very key verse. It says, Vidyate hridaye grantis chidyante sarva samshaya kshyante shashya karmani drishta eva atmanishvare. This is the series of verses and the last verse there. Thus the knot in the heart is pierced and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive action is terminated when one sees the self as master. What this verse is saying is the ego is the glue which binds the soul and the subtle body. Okay. So long as the ego is there, we will always identify with the mind, with the body, with the gross and subtle body. And how will the ego get released? The ego can be released only by the Supreme Lord. And I want to read some sections from Prabhupada's purport in this. In the Bhagavad Gita in 10:11, there is a verse there, Tesham Eva Anukampartam, there's a verse there. One of the four Chatusloki verses, the fourth verse. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:11, the Lord says that to show special favor to his pure devotees, he personally eradicates the dense darkness of all misgivings by switching on the light of pure knowledge within the heart of a devotee. So this cutting of this ego, piercing the ego or disconnecting the ego from the soul and the subtle body, that can be done only by the Lord. This enlightenment perfectly enables the devotee to distinguish spirit from matter, from the soul from the body, because the knot of spirit and matter is untied by the Lord. And this knot is called ahankara. Ahankara means ego. And it falsely obliges a living being to become identified with the body. As soon as this knot is loosened, therefore, Prabhupada writes, all the clouds of doubt are at once cleared. One sees his master, that is the soul, and fully engages himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Then this is called self-realization. The realization that I am a spiritual being, I am a pure consciousness, happens with the mercy of the Lord. And that is what that 1854 Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, that verse comes there. From that platform, one can do pure devotional service. So, in summary, I'm just using some terminologies to clarify. Chetana means pure consciousness. Chitta means borrowed consciousness or conditioned consciousness. Ahankara is what connects the soul to the subtle body. And prana is what connects the subtle body to the gross body. The connection between the subtle body and the gross body happens through prana. So I will stop here before I want to talk about the benefits of knowing this knowledge, about knowing there are two types of consciousness. Our current consciousness, though we have pure consciousness, we have no access to that pure consciousness. We are acting today only in terms of through the conditioned consciousness, because we are experiencing what is happening in the subtle body. The pain and pleasures which are happening are all happening in the subtle body. The pure consciousness, the soul, has nothing to do with that. It is realizing that truth is what the process of spirituality is. Theoretically, we may know I'm not this body, but I'm a spirit soul. But how to realize that? That realization happens through a process. Bhakti Yoga is a process by which one can realize that I'm not the body, but I'm a spiritual being and I'm a servant of the Lord. So I want to stop here. And any question, there'll be a lot of questions, I'm sure. Yeah.
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. When you were talking about the subtle body, when you're talking about how the subtle body of a human is different to the subtle body of a rat, I was just thinking, because I know that as long as the soul is in this material world, it is covered by the subtle body. So how does the subtle body, like, does it cannot change?
It can change.
Like, as in, I mean, like the whole.
No. Okay, let me clarify. The soul doesn't change. Okay, so your question is, her basic premise is the subtle body will not change. So if you are a spiritual being, if you are a human being, you have a subtle body. The subtle body of a rat, does it have a separate, different subtle body? That's okay. You are correct. In the sense, I'm sorry, you're not correct. You're wrong. The soul is the same, whether it is a cat or a rat or a human being. The soul is the same. The subtle body is different for a rat, a cat, or a human being. The subtle body goes through changes, just like Darwin's theory of evolution is there. Darwin talked about evolution of the gross body, which is not correct. Okay, the subtle body evolves. That is why we say we have gone through 8.4 million species. We have gone through and ultimately came into the human form. The subtle body changes. It's transformed into, depending on the senses. The subtle body means what? What does the subtle body comprise of? It comprises of the mind, intelligence, ego, senses, all the subtle senses, not the senses, these are the gross senses. The eyes, everything are gross senses. There is a subtle sense which is surrounding the mind. The senses, the prana are all part of the subtle body. That changes with different species. It evolves.
What we say is the hardware, software, and power.
Yeah, you can say that. Yes, you can say. The hardware is the gross body. The software is the subtle body, and the soul is the source of power. Without the source of power, the hardware and software cannot work. Without the software, the hardware cannot work. Without the subtle body, the gross body cannot work.
And we can also say that the hardware is changing all the time.
Hardware is changing every birth and death. The software doesn't change except when it changes the species. But otherwise, the same software continues till we get liberation.
And till the time we are actually upgrading that software and removing all the viruses from that software to make it
Correct.
wireless.
Yeah.
Virus
The subtle body contains all the vasanas, all the impressions. Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, does that also mean that, because the subtle body also has impressions from your.
Yeah, because the subtle body migrates along with the soul to another. At the time of death, the subtle body and the soul migrates to another gross body through the womb of a mother, gets another gross body. So what we are getting is continuously gross bodies. Subtle body is traveling along with the soul continuously.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So we also heard actually Antakaran, and Antakaran I understand is the
Antakarana is subtle body.
So, but it says Antakaran is actually Chitta, mind, intelligence, and essentially the false ego.
Correct.
But it doesn't talk about the subtle senses.
It is there. When they say the mind includes the senses. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita. It says about 5, including the mind.
Yeah.
Senses means mind and senses. Subtle sense.
Okay. And Prabhuji, sorry, how the ignorance, so in Srimad Bhagavatam it's mentioned that 5 ignorance which Brahmaji creates, which is the Moha, Mahamoha, Tamishra, Antatamishra, and like that. So how does that work here in the subtle body? So is that the 5 ignorance what Brahma creates that basically covers up the subtle body?
Yeah. The fundamental ignorance, the ego. The ego is the first source of ignorance, tamaguna. It is from the ego that all the other things evolve. All the other things. So tamaguna is the fundamental ignorance. The ego has 2 characteristics: avarna sakti and the covering potency and the projecting potency. It covers the soul and projects that you are the body. Avarna Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti.
And the Avarana Shakti is the main ego.
The ego has these 2, yeah.
Not Ahankar, but the main ego is the Avaran, which is essentially the covering.
Covering.
The actual covering.
Yeah.
Right, sir, I have a question.
Who's that?
That's me.
He's
Yeah.
But before that, I think he has a question.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, you finish. Okay, let him finish. Okay.
Sir, what I would like to know is subtle body somehow connected to soul or not?
Subtle body is connected to the soul or not?
Yes.
Yeah, the subtle body is connected to the soul through the ego.
Through the ego. Okay.
The ego is
This
a binding force.
Got the point.
Yeah.
The question now is, when person is in a coma, gross body is disconnected with the subtle body. Subtle
When
body.
the person is in coma,
Yeah. His gross body is disconnected to his subtle body.
why?
So now.
Why? Well, no, when the person is in coma, the gross body and subtle body are not disconnected. No.
In a sense, all his karmendriya
Sorry?
all his indriya is not listening to his subtle body. He's not doing anything.
Yeah.
Except
when the
unless
person
you-
when the person is in coma, the pranas get affected. The communication between the subtle body and the gross body happens to the prana. There are 5 airs, the 5 vital forces.
Yeah.
It is that is the medium through which the transmission between the subtle body and the gross body happens. So when there is these sort of states, it is the prana which gets disturbed. Okay, we'll discuss that a little more. Maybe I'll take some more questions.
My question is 2 or 3 questions, I think, around pure consciousness. So you mentioned, so obviously the soul originally descends from the spiritual world to come to this material
That
plane.
we'll not get into that thing from where the soul came. That's a very big discussion together. We'll not discuss that.
Yeah. I'm not asking about that. I guess this is just setting the context. So in the spiritual world there is no subtle body, so hence you cannot desire.
No.
But
We
then-
will not go to the spiritual world. That's another discussion. We will discuss in this material world, in
Yeah.
what we know. That's a different discussion altogether. We'll not get into that. We'll discuss questions related to what is happening in the material world.
I guess my question is, and if it's out of subject, please let me know. My question is really, how did the soul desire if it did not have a subtle body, and only subtle body can actually desire, because that's what we told. So that's my question.
Okay. So
And
I'll
then-
quickly answer that question.
Yeah.
The capacity to desire comes from consciousness.
The capacity.
To desire comes from consciousness.
Yeah.
That desire gets vitiated or distorted when it becomes from the conditioned consciousness. Okay, because the same consciousness, but it is a conditioned consciousness. Just like the sunshine is there and the moonlight is there, they are not. The moonlight coming is not the original light of the moon; it is coming from the sun. But that moonlight is a distorted, conditioned light. Just like that, the desire coming from the subtle body is a distorted desire, which has to be purified.
So subtle body is not needed to have a desire then. Is that correct?
Sorry?
A subtle body is not required.
Wherever there is
to have
consciousness, the subtle body is conscious because it is in the presence of the pure consciousness. The subtle body also becomes conscious, and hence it has the capacity to desire.
Right. Okay. All right. The other thing was, is there any relation between intuition and consciousness, and what we call the sixth sense? Are these things the same or different?
No. Intuition is a subset of intuition is possible because of the presence of consciousness. Intuition is possible because of the presence of consciousness. Without consciousness, nothing is, it's matter, dead matter. Nothing can be possible. Anything is possible only and only because of consciousness. And the original source of that pure consciousness is from the soul. That pure consciousness gets conditioned, vitiated, distorted because of the presence of the subtle body and the ego and all other things. Because of the mind which has the impressions, blah, 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 all those things.
So how do you define intuition or the sixth sense? How is that to be defined?
I
different
will not be able to immediately react. I may have to think about it. Yeah.
That's fine. I do have more questions, but I'll let others ask.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams. Okay. It's about the part of intelligence. So we're talking about the seer and the seen. So from the mind is the seer and seen is the gross. So where does intelligence come? So that next should be intelligence seeing mind or something. So what?
Yeah. Basically, you can think like this. When you say intelligence, is not the intelligence which we understand mathematics. They're not that sort of intelligence. Okay. Buddhi in this context is the capacity to discriminate between what is real and not real, what is right and what is wrong. Okay. What is matter and what is spirit. That is the meaning of intelligence in this context. Okay. Not the material intelligence in terms of studying capacity. That is intelligence is different. That's a material intelligence. So basically, you can understand like this. Mind and intelligence are two forces given to you. The mind is connected to the ego. The soul is more connected to the soul. Okay. The mind's function is I like, I don't like. You understand? I like this, I don't like. What is the word? I like this, I don't like this. That means coming from the ego. I. Buddhi is telling you, this is right, this is wrong. There is no I in that. In right and wrong, there is no I. In like and dislike, I is there. So the mind is connected to the ego. The intelligence is an independent entity by itself. So the more and more you strengthen the buddhi through devotional service by connecting with Krishna. There's a verse in Bhagavad Gita 2.666. Nasti buddhir. There's a verse there which says, if you cannot be happy if your mind is not controlled. You cannot control your mind without a strong intelligence. You cannot have a strong intelligence without connecting to the to the soul, to the Supreme Lord. So your buddhi, so what you have to do is through devotional service, strengthen your buddhi, which is saying this is right, this is wrong. When you say this is right means do what is as per the scriptures, don't do through what your whims and fancies are. So make your buddhi strong by practicing devotional service. Through buddhi you control your mind. Am I making sense?
So basically, there is no I in the intelligence, there is no aspect of seer in the intelligence. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, Prabhu. And also, question about where we were saying the pure consciousness doesn't get disturbed at all.
It is
Like
it is witnessing. It is just a witness. But it identifies with what is happening in the subtle body.
Right.
And this is called identification. Just like if you have a mirror and if I put tilak on my head, the tilak is also there on the reflection.
Yes.
So whatever is happening in the subtle body, because the subtle body is like a mirror. Mahaprabhu in his Sikshashtakam says, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. The word mirror comes there. That Chetano Darpana, that means cleansing of the mirror, cleansing of the subtle body. So whatever is happening in the subtle body is like a mirror. The soul identifies with that. And it also experiences pain and pleasure. Just like when you go to a movie and you see the hero is getting punched by the villain, you start crying. Nothing is happening to you, but you're identified with what is happening on the screen. Similarly, the soul identifies with what is happening on the screen of the subtle body, and it experiences pain and pleasure. Nothing is happening to it.
And so also with respect to the coma section, so it's basically like when we're taking this anesthesia or something, so you're not feeling the consciousness. So is that your anesthesia is basically given to it affects the prana part of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Muralidhar Prabhuji, I just want to consolidate my view. I'm just taking it like this, that as soul travels, body
Soul along with the subtle body.
along with the subtle body.
Always remember that. The soul doesn't travel without the subtle body.
Okay. Then pure consciousness and borrowed consciousness, these two things also travels with
Correct.
the soul.
Correct.
First thing. Second thing, how to describe, because for me, I don't know, maybe others may understand this thing, how to describe, because as you are saying that pure consciousness is, its source is soul.
Correct.
Then reflected consciousness source is also soul.
Reflected consciousness is happening because it's a reflection. Just like the sun is there and the lake is there, water body. The sun reflects, sunshine comes on this lake, and from there the reflection happens on the wall.
So
the medium is the lake. So
this is something which is not actually existing. Does it mean this? That reflected consciousness is nothing.
It is existing, but it is temporary.
Okay, it's existing but temporary. But then how to differentiate? Means more elaborately.
How to move from conditioned consciousness to pure consciousness? How to move from there?
No, I just want to understand how soul and pure consciousness is the same thing, or they two different things.
The attribute of the soul is consciousness. The source from where consciousness comes is the soul. Okay. Just like if you have a fire, heat comes from the fire.
Okay.
It's a quality of fire is heat. The quality of the soul is consciousness.
Thank you. Haribol.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Who's that?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for the class, Prabhu. I was just lost between the prana and chetana. So, in other words, Atman, Ahankara, and prana. So, if you can define them briefly, please.
So, Ahankara, we understood that, correct? It's ego. Ego is the sense of I, the sense of I-ness. I. That sense of I comes from Ahankara. Prana is a force which communicates between the subtle body and the gross body, which enables it. what is happening in the mind, that is communicate. For example, the sense of sight. You see something from the gross body, it is communicated to the mind through the prana. There are about 4 or 5 activities of the prana. There are 5 kinds of prana, which will not get into it. For example, blood circulation is happening in our body. That is happening because of prana. Digestion is happening. That is because of prana. It is a force. It is a force, subtle force. It's not a visible, it's a very subtle force. There are 5 kinds of forces. And if you read the purport of Prabhupada's of 217, Prabhupada talks about the 5 pranas there.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Guru.
Yeah, the prana itself is a very elaborate subject. I'm not getting into that now. But
So-
you can understand this one. Prana is the connecting medium between the subtle body and the gross body.
So because prana is not soul, of course, right?
Well, prana is again matter, but subtle matter.
Not soul, though.
It's not a soul.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Prana becomes active in the presence of the soul. In the presence of consciousness, prana becomes active. Without consciousness, prana is dead matter.
We'll close it.
Okay, we stop here. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Is it there? Yeah. Clarity of purpose. What is the purpose of life? If your real identity is your pure consciousness, it gives you the purpose of life. If you are eternal and spiritual, your goal shifts from temporary bodily material pleasures to permanent fulfillment. Because conditioned consciousness is temporary, depending on the subtle body and the gross body. So that is clarity of purpose. Freedom from anxiety and fear. Especially if you come to know, if you realize that I am a pure consciousness and that is indestructible, then especially your fear and death, you will be able to reduce the fear of death and decay. Greater emotional stability. Emotions linked to ego, because all the emotions in terms of pride, envy, grief, you are able to see them as objects. You are not that. You are an object. I mean, you are a subject, and those are all objects. Emotions linked to ego, pride, envy, or grief are tied to bodily and mental identification. When rooted in your identity as Atma, you become more of a witness. You become a witness of what is happening in the mind. You put a distance between the mind and yourself. Compassion and unity with others. Recognizing others as Atmans too fosters deep respect, empathy and love. Detachment with engagement. You can be active in the world but detached from its outcomes, as the Gita teaches. This is Karma Yoga. Yukta Vairagya, using everything in Krishna's service. Knowing you are not the doer but a witness. You meaning here, you are the pure consciousness. You are a witness, helps reduce burnout and ego-driven frustration. Access to inner peace and joy. If you are able to meditate on this, that I am the pure consciousness, then the Atman is inherently full of knowledge, bliss and eternity. Okay, you can read that. Opens the door to bhakti. When you know you are not just the body or mind, but you are a pure consciousness, a servant of the divine, it becomes natural to develop a personal relationship with God. And this is the gateway to Bhakti Yoga, the path of loving devotion. Some practical actions. Start the day grounded in your true identity. As I said, there is a difference between identity and a role. Your identity, your pure consciousness. Your role is based on your conditioned consciousness. So start the day grounded in your true identity, from survival mode to soul mode. Use meditation or mantra to recenter, to go back and realize who I am. Reframe negative emotions. When these emotions come, ask yourself, is this the Atma's nature or the mind's conditioning? Is it coming from the pure consciousness or conditioned consciousness? Interact with others as Atmans. See family, co-workers and even enemies as eternal souls caught in material coverings. Do your duty as an offering, not for ego. Let me act as an instrument, not for praise, fear or reward. So these are some of the benefits of understanding and realizing this knowledge. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Muralidhar Prabhu, for presenting that very enlightening and very technical subject matter on soul, subtle body, prana, and so on.